Lainey, it's so good to see you. So we're fast approaching the holidays.
Mhm.
How are you doing with that?
Not very good. I don't. I haven't decorated yet. I probably should, and I will get around to it. But I haven't done anything. The time goes by so quickly. I can't believe it's already the fourth, and so we are 21 days away.
I know. It does.
And
It just
what
descends
about
on
you?
us
Have you?
quickly. Well, my house happens to be on the Friends of the Library Christmas home
Oh
tour this
yes.
Saturday. So we were away for Thanksgiving up in San Luis Obispo with big family event and then coming home. So it's been a bit hectic. But holidays can be that way. So I'm trying to breathe and enjoy it and not become
Yes.
so manic about it
Yeah.
because it's easy to become manic about it.
It is. It is.
Well, we have with us today Sherri Jaye, which we're very excited to have her with us today. And we know that she has some interesting things to talk to us about. So, Sherri, thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you both for inviting me, and I'm glad I made it today. Um, so I've been thinking about, what am I going to talk about being an author or like being a life coach or all the things I can have been, but I'm thinking about where I am today, and today I'm I'm alone for the first time in 14 years. And before that, I was alone for 10 years. And in that 10 years, I was just really working on growing and learning and learning on being alone back then and not needing anyone. But really, the whole thought process back then was for me to become someone that some wonderful man would want and would attract. And so that was the the motivation was of being alone was to build myself up to be the best I could be to attract someone who would recognize that.
Appreciate it.
So
Now
so
that's
that
interesting. Yeah.
was my motive. So because I was studying Kabbalah and I was studying all the things and coaching I was doing in all that time of being and becoming who I was becoming, I was very focused and very excited and also very happy being alone in those years. And it was the first time I was very dependent in my two marriages. I was like a old fashioned or traditional kind of marriage, and even though I was making money and a partner, I still was in that sense the woman, the little woman at home, I think. And still I asked if I could go places and do things, and I feel like I made myself small.
Oh,
That is very interesting because I don't see that at all in you, asking permission. That is remarkable.
yeah, you're
So,
incredibly strong
yeah, so because I
woman.
wasn't that way. My mother wasn't either. Who my mother was very strong, but still, and my mother was the breadwinner, but still asked permission and asked if she
So
could
that's
buy
good
things.
behavior.
And that must be where I was like that.
Wow.
But in those 10 years from 50 to 60 there, I loved being in my own home and being learning how to be my own person and learning how to handle life in those 10 years and grow up. And I felt that's what I did in those years. And so then when I spent all that time with Sal and feeling I had a life partner, and even though I certainly was happy only having him on weekends, I did not want to get married. I did not want someone to start taking away my independence that I learned how to have. And I never asked him permission for anything. I would share with him that I was going to do things, but I was never asking in that relationship.
So how did you arrive at that? Like, where was that point when you decided I'm no longer gonna ask permission?
Because
brought
we
you
weren't
to that?
married.
Oh,
It was
so
about being not married.
that is
Because
interesting.
that was my house and everything was what I have been able to achieve on my own, and I was aware of who I was becoming, and so I didn't let him take that away from me. And that was one of the reasons. That's why I would not get married. I was afraid that I would fall back. Though in this situation, I was the person who had the money, and I also didn't want him to have any part of that. So unless I wanted to share with him whatever I shared on my own, but it was nothing that I had to do, and um, I kept my independence in that relationship.
So you were seeing him for many years just on weekends or when you went away together on trips. But then you moved to Baja and he moved with you and you moved in together. What was that? Why did that happen rather than maybe him moving down here and you living separately or, you know, because you didn't get married, correct?
We didn't get married, and um, though I knew that I wanted to move to Mexico. I knew that when I wanted to retire. And so he just seemed to be happy. And of course, because he's Mexican, it seemed, he was willing to do anything I wanted to do or go anywhere I wanted to go. So he had to give up, his place and seeing his kids also. And so, but I seemed excited about it, actually. I thought that way it would make us closer because we weren't as close as I was saying, in a deeper manner. It was a playful, certainly playful and fun, and I was happy with that. But because it was my house, and he was moving in with me, I had to work to make him feel important in that house because he felt like he didn't have a room, and he didn't have this, and he didn't have this. And I'd say, well, I'll give you the bar, and I tried to make him feel that he had a place there, and had his office, and he had enough space that I felt like he had a whole garage that I gave him. I felt like it was a lot of stuff, but he paid for nothing of the house. Nothing. And that was, I never realized how much taking care of that house would be. Each year, the painting and everything falls apart and the whatever. So it was a lot on me. And, and then
He never contributed to
not to the house. He had the deal was that he was going to pay the bills. But he led me on to believe that these bills were a lot more than they were. I never saw them. I kind of slipped into that dependent thing that they paid the bills and I didn't pay attention.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I
Why
knew.
do we do that?
Because it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. It's so easy for us to just hand over certain things in our life and have somebody else take care of it, but then we end up paying as a result,
Well,
right?
I knew he was doing it through Quadros. I knew I didn't know specifically what they were. I didn't really even know how it was that he was paying it. You're supposed to keep money in there like in a pot, and then they just take out and pay things. But I didn't know he wasn't doing that. I didn't know he didn't pay my homeowner's insurance. I didn't have it since 2020. I didn't know. I gave them $500 in July when I first started to take over, and I haven't had to pay them again for any of that. I paid the homeowner's insurance for a year, and so I'm thinking how he made me feel that the expenses were very high, and that was for him.
He made you feel like it was an equal partnership, that he was paying as much as you had paid for the house itself.
Well, no, he had those bills to pay that I thought, plus the housekeeper. But he did not, he didn't pay. We paid each for our trips. We, most things that he was realizing he couldn't pay for, all these dinners and all these fundraisers and all these things that we were doing. So he stopped going to all those things. So I was doing some of them by myself, and slowly I decided to stop going to them myself. But I felt sorry, like we were paying half of the food when I'd go to Costco, and then I'd come back and we'd go through it and he'd pay for half. And I would say, oh, you don't have to pay for that. Oh, you don't have to pay for that. And I'd feel bad for him because I felt like that it was always so much.
So do you feel that he felt demasculated?
I tried not to do that. I was conscious that he could feel that way,
Yeah.
and of course I was. So like I'd say something to him, like it was almost like his mind believed that it was his. Like 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 he'd say something, and like I can't put it on of what it is, like something that I would say, are you kidding me? Like thinking like it was his. Like I'd say, well, if I don't want to do that, I could veto you. And he'd say, well, why do you have veto power? Like, how could he not? Because what do you mean? How do I have veto power? Because it's my house. But I couldn't say, like, how could I not say that to him? So I said, well, I have veto power because I'm the woman. So that was my answer. But I don't even understand how he would even question why would I not, how could I not have veto power of something?
So I'm a firm believer that nothing happens accidentally. There is a reason. And I wonder, because I think everybody in our lives that we encounter are our teachers. We learn. So what did you learn from him?
Or from the situation.
That you took something with you that will serve you in the future from this experience of 14 years.
I was at work. I had to trust him. In order to be in that relationship, I felt like I had to trust him. And I had to trust the money situation. I had to trust whatever he was telling me, because I don't want to go and ask questions and not trust somebody. So I trusted him in a way that I feel like I shouldn't, because on my other hand, when I first met him back in the day, I'd say, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, right? Like, he's too good to be true. He's such a he was so different than anybody I had ever been with, and such a gentleman, and in such a way. But I believe today, I believe it's all a con. And I don't believe much of it. And there were many people in my family who did not believe in him and did not trust him and warned me from him and felt like he was a con. And for me to feel that, I have to really, I now feel that. And that makes me not trust myself.
Oh, gosh, that's sad. Well,
so because I don't need that. I didn't need that. I didn't need somebody who just wanted me for what I could give him. And so now, and I didn't need that then. I'm not needy in that regard at all. In wanting to be in a relationship, I was really working hard to learn how to have and choose and attract a healthy man. And to not have done that, I cannot spend a lot of time beating myself up about it, because I have to think, when I talk to God and I talk about it, I would never have been able to travel and see the world as I saw. And so that's my trade-off. Or with my friends and family and the stuff that I was able to do of traveling. To me, that's the gift of it all, and that's the benefits of him. And that's what he knew, that was his benefits. That's what he knew was what he brought to the table, is that we get to travel and do that. But I don't feel like I was blinded from that. I really believed that we were going to be okay. But I don't see that. And once I started to feel like I don't need him to go on cruises, I don't need him for really anything. And once I came to that realization that I don't need a man for anything, then I feel very complete in my own today.
oh, now that's beautiful. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Feeling complete. What does that mean for you now?
So when I was in Sardinia, they're very famous for these filigree rings.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I always wanted a ring like this as a wedding ring with diamonds in it.
Mm-hmm.
um, but they have all these bands, gold and all kinds. And so I ended up buying 3 of them for my daughters, and they were called marriage rings. And so then then they've made them a little cheaper for the regular people to have, but they're everywhere. And so I bought the 3 for my daughters and gave them a story of it so they could have it and wear them as a wedding ring. And I put it on, and I decided to be married to me.
Yes, I think
I
that's
love
very,
that.
Yes,
So
I think that's
Married to you. I
a
love
little
that.
ceremony there with the lady there. We had a whole little moment and saying I wanted this as a wedding ring, and so I feel like I'm finding like takes me to be 73 to be married to myself and be with myself finally, after all those years of never feeling
so
complete.
you never feel lonely.
No.
You don't feel bored.
No.
That's good.
No.
That's wonderful.
I don't. I feel
So-
like I feel the freedom that I've always wanted to have.
So
Oh.
don't you think that you almost needed to go through this experience in order to arrive where you are at now? That I'm looking at cost versus benefit, and I would think that the benefit you have arrived at was worth the cost that you paid in terms of a relationship.
Well,
where
you also said that you got so much out of all the travel that maybe you would not have done that. So that was also a gift in your life at that time. And that the relationship didn't fulfill you in deep ways that you needed to be fulfilled or wanted to be fulfilled. And it sounds like you're finding that deepness and love within yourself, for yourself.
Exactly.
That to me,
Beautiful.
is what we should all strive for, even if we're in relationship. That ultimately the most important relationship is the one with ourselves. And you had been working on that previously before meeting him.
Right.
He sort of maybe, I don't know if he took you off that path, but didn't deepen that path for you. Now you're back on that path.
Before that, you ever see the movie Shallow Hal? Do you know
Yes,
this movie Shallow
yes.
Hal? So that's how I felt I was. Like, my husbands were very good looking, like that was like so important to me. And as I was growing and learning, I toned myself down a lot because being as blonde as I used to be and being as sexual as I used to look and how I was, I just felt like you're just attracting somebody who's just looking at you, at your outside, and they're not ever knowing my inside. And I already recognized that before Sal. I had already realized that I had done that, and I stopped doing that. And I was really conscious of really trying to have somebody love me for my inside, and I felt like the outside's a bonus, but I wanted to love somebody that way also. And I haven't been able to do that yet, to really find someone that I can find that depth with, and which makes me think that then I don't have that, which I think that I do, but I have not attracted that in my other 2 husbands. I went back to look at my affirmations of what I would say it every day. I'm in this fabulous relationship with a wonderful man who's, emotionally available, and then I look back, is passionate and affectionate. So, and I think now, and I still like sex. So now I think that I played too much in that and saying those words. But when I first did that, when I had to take away good looking, and I had to change it to is attractive to me. Because I felt like I was so hung up on someone being good looking, and I didn't want that, and so I kept changing it. And then I said, and then I had a customer that wanted me to go out with her son-in-law because her daughter had died. And oh, I have, you said you would be wonderful for my son-in-law, and I'm your son-in-law and whatever. So, and I never, this was like a first blind date I'd had in a while, and I'd say, okay, and he comes to the door, really the ugliest face I have, small, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm shallow Hal. I'm shallow Hal. I can't even do it. How am I going to even go do this? And that's what was happening to me every time I'd go on a match date. Like, they were not what their pictures were, and I'd see them, and I'd go, oh my God. And everyone, I kept doing it because I felt like it was helping me know what I didn't want, you know,
The
and,
contrast.
but it never, and I was like, everyone was worse than the next. And this guy, I remember I took him to my son's restaurant, and my son looks at him and looks at me, and I'm like, and I feel terrible. I said, what is wrong that, why would God bring me this person? I shouldn't have to go out with somebody if I can't even look at the person. And I really felt, then this movie came out, the Shallow Hal movie, that it's Adam Sandler or somebody, and he sees, I don't know, something happened to him, and he sees a woman who is gorgeous, but really she's huge, and she's not gorgeous. And then we see these gorgeous women, but he sees them and they look like witches. And so it's just very interesting, and I started to really feel that that's what I was. And so I have to.
We need to take a break now. I'm so sorry. We'll come right back.